From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is the original podcast about consumption, and with me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. He's also the authority on Michigan beer, and has new and interesting pets living in the corner of his bathroom. Sean, how are you doing today?
Oh, you know me. Just looking for some honey, John. Looking for some honey.
I think my pet comment threw you off of your normal quipping at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, I don't think I had anything to say, so I had to think of it just now. Had to stall for time.
Well, that's fine. We can edit that out, or depending on what platform you listen to, you might be able to just skip silent gaps altogether, ruining the joke. So it's only been a couple days since we recorded last, but have you caught anything in those couple days, or?
Yeah, I caught a couple things. I've been kind of, I don't remember, I know that we talked about this, but Barry just started, the new season of Barry with Bill Hader and...
Again?
Yeah, the new season 4, the newest and final season just started.
I guess we have been doing this show for about a year now, so I get, okay.
Yeah, a little over a year. Caught up on Barry at the time of this recording. It's 3 episodes in. Still a really good season. Last episode 3, I want to say last episode, but by the time people listen to this, it could have been God knows what the last episode was, but it's a really good one. It was a really good kind of return to form. I thought that the first 2 were kind of existential, maybe a little bit. Maybe that's the wrong term, but that's kind of how it felt. And then this one, kind of back to the tried and true formula of Barry. So I watched that. I watched a documentary called Potty Town, and mostly I watched that because I watched it with one of my kids, and it was like the only, I don't know, appropriate documentary I could find to watch with her. It's supposed to be like a all ages thing. It's about a guy in New York, Potsdam, New York, who had a property dispute, and they wouldn't rezone his land that he owned so he could sell it to a Dunkin' Donuts. So he ended up making a toilet garden on his properties where he, he puts these toilets out they're on these main streets, and he'll fill them full of dirt and flowers. And it was basically this fight he had with the city going back and forth to say whether or not he was allowed to treat his property the way he wanted to treat it.
Is this New York City or New York State?
Potsdam, New York State. So
it's not like the downtown area. It's like a suburb or something?
Yeah, I want to say it's St. Lawrence County. I think that there's a St. Lawrence University, I believe, is there. But yeah, so it's just about that. People donating toilets to him. Some townspeople thought it was great, and some people thought it was stupid, and they hated him. The guy's like 80 some years old, so it was. It's hard. It's not a recommend. It wasn't great. It went really too deep into city politics for me. I really couldn't care less about city politics or politics for the most part in general.
Nothing entertains kids quite like city politics, right?
Yeah, and my kid fell asleep while we were watching it, if that's any indication. I watched that and then watched new to me, the most recent WWE documentary on the Iron Sheik. I don't know if you saw that one or not.
I saw that it was available. I got distracted on other mini sports documentaries that I'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, I think there was a documentary just called Sheik a couple years ago that kind of followed the Iron Sheik, more of the mystique around him. A lot of his story revolves around his daughter who was murdered. So it kind of went into that a little bit. They kind of touched on it in the beginning, as these WWE docs kind of want to touch on the dark moment at the beginning and kind of foreshadow it. And this one didn't really, it was only like the last half hour or so, or maybe last 20 minutes. They kind of touched on it. It's a sad story about his daughter, but I mean, I didn't realize, like I said, I saw that other doc, so I kind of did realize that he was at one time big coke user. I didn't realize that he was like,
I could have guessed that without you telling me anything other than that he was a wrestler
in the 80s.
Yeah. Not even just that. Like, you could tell me he was a wrestler now and I still wouldn't be shocked by that.
Well, then I didn't realize that he was kind of responsible for the first, big, I don't know, indiscretion for kayfabe, breaking kayfabe by riding in the car with Hacksaw Jim Duggan getting arrested for drugs. And then he eventually was a crackhead, and his wife left him. I didn't realize that he was a crack cocaine user either. But, lots of interesting things that you learn about watching WWE documentaries. But yeah, in the last couple days, that's really all I had a chance to watch. I did watch some other kind of odds and ends and the usual YouTube dreck, but other than that, that's pretty much what I've been watching on. How about you?
Well, while we're on Wrestler Corner, apparently this is older news than I thought it was. Did you see that Bushwhacker Butch died just a couple weeks ago?
No, I had to actually think. Luke is the other one, right? Bushwhacker Luke?
That was Bill.
Butch. I thought it was Butch and Luke.
That was Bill, but okay. It popped up on one of my news feeds like the other day, and now I'm looking at this and it's like from the beginning of the month, so maybe it's older than I thought. But no, you're right, it's Luke. So looking at this article now, yeah, I have fond memories of the Bushwhackers and their armpit licking antics. So
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Why haven't they had their own little documentary yet? So
I think they're in the Tales from the Territory. They don't.
Oh,
one of them. I don't remember which one. I think it was Luke.
Now I have a whole new reason to watch that. So you said you didn't have anything else that you really got to?
No, not really. No.
I went into like a little. Again, we've only had a couple days since we talked last, so we didn't do a whole ton, but hit a little like sports documentary rabbit hole myself. Of not a huge one though. I got on ESPN's 30 for 30 folder and watched the little documentary on the Bullies from Baltimore, the 2000 championship team, which had, Ray Lewis and so many guys that were assistant coaches there that you've gone to see be failed head coaches like Jack Del Rio and Marvin Lewis. And
are you talking about Murderer Ray Lewis? That one?
Accused murderer. So that's actually a big part of this particular documentary because it happened going into the season that they are chronicling. So they hit it both at the beginning of the show and then at the tail end because they get to the Super Bowl. Of course, they're going to be like, well, this guy murdered a guy, even though he didn't. So, or he didn't get found guilty of it or whatever. I don't know. Ray Lewis, if you hear this, I don't think you killed anyone. So if
I do.
So
sorry, Ray.
If you're going to come looking for someone, Sean is over there. Deal with him. So you can squirrel dance on him all you want. I don't think he's going to fight back that much.
Not when I'm murdered.
Generally, no. So I don't know. I've said before, though, I like those kind of behind the scene type things where they follow a team for a whole season. This isn't the same as like a Hard Knocks or was it All or Nothing where I don't know why that weirded me out. So this isn't like a Hard Knocks or an All or Nothing where they like start the season with the team and have a camera crew with them. Obviously, this is 20 some odd years later, but it's still interesting just to kind of see that dynamic even then and see a team that was actually a bunch of assholes. Like they were making bets on if they were going to injure a quarterback before the, game was over. And most of the time they did, that type of stuff. So, and then what might have been more interesting, and I know it's coming back now, but they have another documentary on there about the initial failure of the XFL. It's just called This Was the XFL. For all his, speaking of criminals, for all his shortcomings, Vince McMahon, if you put a microphone on him and let him like talk grandeur, he's interesting to listen to because he is full of shit and high as a kite and thinks every idea that he has is the best fucking idea in the world, and more often than not, it's not. So that one's been up there for a little bit. Have you seen that one by chance?
I feel like I have. They talk about the Dick Ebersol and the locker cams and all that stuff. I've seen it. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but yeah, that was a pretty good one.
How they pissed off Lauren Michael because their only like good game of the entire season ran into SNL because of a blackout and overtime.
Yeah,
that and just watching these like washed up like commentators just imitate Vince McMahon is always kind of funny too. So
Mr. McMahon, Jerry Briscoe. Briscoe wasn't an announcer for that, was he?
I don't believe so. There's a younger, he looks young by announcer standards now. And so he was probably 20 something when he did this initially, when the league first came around. I still love watching that footage though, because they have their, what do they call it? I don't remember what they called it now, but their replacement for the kickoff where they basically just let two dudes like run at each other at full speed and kind of dive for the ball. And with the first game, they're like, well, his season's over.
Yeah, like some guy in the first play, right? He broke his leg or tore his knee, his ACL or something.
Something terrible. I think I said there were like just on there. I'm calling it the kickoff because I can't remember what they called it. It was like the skirmish or some shit like that. They said they had like 4 guys have season-ending injuries off that play in week 1. So clearly well thought out.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could do a lot worse than some of those 30 for 30 docs that are on there. And really, if you have any, even like the slightest amount of interest in whatever the topic is, whether it's baseball or racing or whatever, they do a pretty good job with that series. At least I haven't found one that's been terrible.
Yeah, I've liked just about every one that I've watched. And they always have something kind of interesting. Either if you follow sports at least a little bit, you generally know a part of some of the story, or you've heard of it. You might not know the ins and the outs of Tommy Morrison, but they have a whole fucking documentary about Tommy Morrison,
Did you ever watch the one about the guy who bought the Islanders but he didn't have any money?
Yeah, he like scammed them. Yeah, I did see that. That one was good too. That was a really good one.
That's one of my all-around favorite like sports docs ever, just because it's one of those stories where it's like, how the fuck did this go this far? Like, you can say that over and over again, and it never really gets old in that documentary because, I mean, I think that guy just got arrested again recently for trying to like scam a trucking company or something like that. So, but anyway, so I guess that's enough for Sports Corner because that's all I really watched this week. Other than that, I've just been kind of half-ass binging Cheers, which I know we both have a soft spot for. But
I love Cheers. When I was getting over my back surgery, that was the show I watched a lot of. But I started in like season 3 because I don't for some reason want like the Coach. I like the Woody era.
It gets better when Woody's there.
Yeah.
Coach is okay, but Woody's just better. He's a more lovable character than Coach ever was. So,
and that's it for Cheers Corner this week. But we do have a topic.
We do. So this week we have a topic, and this is a request. This movie that we had to watch or suffer through or something along those lines.
I like that you phrase it, had to. This movie we had to watch.
Well, we didn't have to, but we chose to because we want to interact with you, the either vengeful or loving public. I'm not really sure which. But this movie was requested by Dissect That Film. They also have a really solid podcast that is available on every platform, and you can follow them on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm sure other places too. So check them out. But they have requested that we talk about the movie Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Yeah. So, as we tend to do, I'm going to start this one with our third-party review this week. So, for some reason, IMDb had reviews that were really, really, really long, like longer than the movie long. When you expand it, you're just like, I'm not reading all this shit.
Not going to do that.
Thankfully, Rotten Tomatoes came and saved the day. So, our third-party review for the week is from Eric N. on Rotten Tomatoes. He says simply, "My boy Pooh slaying all these hoes with his Timbs on." That's the whole review.
Oh, all right. Podcast over.
All right. You want to go into the plot with this one, and then we can kind of start breaking this thing down?
I'm just going to read the short thing at the top because the one at the bottom is just nonsense.
Long?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't even want to look at it again. To be perfectly honest, the little foreshadowing on how this episode's going to go, I just want to get this over with because, yeah. Anyways, it says... The top of IMDb says, after Christopher Robin abandons them for college, Pooh and Piglet embark on a bloody rampage as they search for a new source of food. And I think you had mentioned this, and I don't remember if it was actually on mic or if we talked about it off mic, but you said, I'm going to predict that this is going to start because I've seen movies by this guy before, and it always has some crappy animation. And that's the thing that like has been burned in my memory because this movie, believe it or not, starts off with a very crappy animation to tell you like what leads into this story.
That actually might be the best part of the movie.
And that's really bad because I looked at this and I thought when it was on, I didn't know anything about the movie. I didn't see a trailer. I didn't watch anything ahead of time. And I watched the animation and I was like, did they just get somebody on Fiverr to draw some of these things? Like they paid the minimum on Fiverr to get somebody to draw, like animate this thing?
This movie only had $100,000 budget, if we're going to believe Wikipedia. So I'm sure it was on, the cheapest thing they could find, whatever it was. Would you believe this movie made it at least recently up to number 9 on IMDb's questionable scale of whatever?
Yeah, that just proves IMDb's scale is broken. No, I can believe that, though, because there was so much hype for this kind of movie. I mean, let's face it, it wasn't Avatar, it wasn't Top Gun Maverick, any of that shit, but there was a lot of people talking about this movie just a month ago.
Well, it went quote-unquote viral because people saw the trailer. It's funny, this is similar to like what happened with Cocaine Bear. It's like you see a trailer, like I don't remember seeing the trailer, but you tell me you're making a Winnie the Pooh. This is a slasher movie, basically. You're making a Winnie the Pooh or a slasher movie with Winnie the Pooh as the main bad guy. This is exactly what I kind of expected. Like, there's really no surprises in this, and it's funny that people like heard Cocaine Bear and saw that trailer and thought, "Oh, this is going to be some great piece of film." Which, in fairness, I had higher expectations for Cocaine Bear than I did for this, for whatever that's worth. But when you watch this and you see what this is, it's like, I think we talked about this maybe last week, but this feels like a made-for-TV sci-fi movie that just somehow got a hard R rating.
Yeah, like it kind of got a little bit away from them, and they decided, oh, hey, we're getting so much hype on this, let's not just do the direct-to-video release, we'll do a full... Did this go to theaters, or was it streaming only?
It did go to theaters because of the hype, and it's already been given a sequel. They've already announced a sequel.
I think we were going to get into that, but yeah, I want my money back. That's all. I would be complaining this would be one of the few movies I would be complaining, I want my money back. So the movie starts, like I mentioned, with the crummy animation to tell the story basically about Christopher Robin meeting Pooh and the gang. Yes. This
is still new, so if you don't want this movie ruined for you, we're probably going to spoil parts of it. So
yeah,
continue.
Okay, well, if you are a human being in America and you've ever seen Winnie the Pooh, the bear, you probably know Christopher Robin is the boy, the human boy that Winnie the Pooh meets and Winnie the Pooh's gang of friends, Eeyore and Piglet and that rabbit thing. Yeah. Original name like Owl. All these great characters that we've all... Oh, Eeyore. Did I mention Eeyore? We've all grown to love Tigger, I guess, but Tigger's not in this because I don't think
they didn't have the rights. They didn't have the rights for Tigger.
Okay, maybe that explains what I'm going to bring up. So they have this backstory about how Pooh and Eeyore and all these guys met Christopher Robin, and Christopher Robin would bring them food. And I don't know, over the course of 10 years, maybe, Christopher Robin, he becomes an adult and he's still friends with these guys, but he's like, yo, guys, I got to go off to college. I'm not going to be able to bring you more food. And so they just start to starve and they decide that...
As you do.
Yeah. Somebody stops bringing you food and your animals, half animal, half human, I think is how they describe them. I think they actually call them half breeds or something like that.
Yeah.
But they can't fend for themselves for some reason. They didn't eat before Christopher Robin showed up. So they decide that they can only do... The thing that they can do is they eat Eeyore because they're all starving. And that brings this madness upon them. Did they ever explain what happened? Because they show... I would say there's probably 5 characters.
5 of them.
They what
show...
happens to the other 2?
Question mark.
That's just
budgetary.
Like it's such a missed opportunity, I thought.
This whole movie is a missed opportunity. I mean, the reason this movie exists is because Winnie the Pooh, the character from the book, not the Disney stuff, the book went to public domain, which is why they're able to do this and call it Winnie the Pooh and, whatever. That's also why you don't have Tigger in this, because Tigger was created by Disney, and I believe they still own the rights to the character. Like, it hasn't hit public domain yet, so no Tigger.
Yeah, nothing that Disney owns will ever go public domain, just to get that out of the way. Because the laws have been changed to keep their shit out of public domain.
Yeah, and I mean, I can understand that, but why they would want that. Like, I'm sure they've greased plenty of wheels to make sure that happens.
Right.
But we digress. So this whole movie, you have this little intro of a backstory as to how these characters got to being fucked up and, stabby people or stabby bear people or whatever we're calling half-breeds. But then after that, there's like no attempt to do anything at all with the source material. And I don't expect them to have, Winnie the Pooh running around pantsless looking for honey or whatever we're accustomed to seeing from Winnie the Pooh. But really, after you get out of that intro, which, in fairness to this movie, if you're going to make a movie about Winnie the Pooh killing people, at least you tried to put some kind of backstory in there to lead to how we got from lovable children's character to this.
This.
But you didn't do anything after that to, like, once you get out of that little animated start, this is just a generic run-of-the-mill, like, you could call this, like, bear and pig mask in woods kill people, and you would have the exact same movie. Like, there's nothing that happens. Yeah, it's a long title. It's a bad title.
It's 7 words.
Is that what this is? Nope, this is 6.
6.
One too many.
Well, I mean, par for the
My
course.
point is, once you get out of that intro, there's nothing about this. I mean, it's just 2 guys killing off disposable characters that we have no reason to like or give a shit about. They're literally the only reason that anyone in this movie, I would argue, including Christopher Robin, exists, past the intro or the prologue of the story, is just to have these 2 bad guys have someone to kill.
Yeah, it's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
And Christopher Robin is basically just in the movie tertiarily. He, at the beginning of the movie, again, this is as far as I'm going to go. Well, no promises, but I think this is probably for right now. 20 minutes into the show or however long we are into the show, this is probably as far as I'm going to go into it. But Christopher Robin he comes back, so he abandons these poor animals. They have no way to fend for themselves. They don't know how to eat unless the food is literally put directly into their mouths and their jaws are manipulated.
I have the exact same problem.
Same here. Christopher Robin comes back with his wife now. I think it's 5 years after he left for college. So he's graduated from college. He comes back to bring his wife back to say, hey, how the old buddy's doing.
He's on the Tommy Boy plan.
And then he comes back and they find that 100 Acre-Woods, the little town that they had built where all the animals lived, it looks a little disheveled. It's got a big jar of honey and then Piglet and Winnie the Pooh show up and that's when the massacre starts, and Christopher Robin's just like tortured essentially for whatever reason, I don't really know, and he pleads with Pooh about, this isn't you, why are you doing this? And I found it funny that in the intro they mention that they swore not to talk anymore. They would never talk again. Pooh and friends, never talking. It's like, well, that's a real convenient thing to do because
now
none
you
of
don't
these
have to have voice actors.
Yeah, you don't have to have anybody talk. And that's like the thing with the Disney stuff, I guess, is that they talk all the time. Like you said, they don't have to hire a voice actor. They don't have to have a person talking in this clumsy mask that looks like sometimes it kind of slips around on the person's face. I got to say something about the mask before we go forward.
Let's talk about the mask, because these masks are easily, like, if this is a $100,000 movie, these masks probably took up about $1,350 of that budget between the 2 of them.
And instantly punchable. Like, I want to punch the shit out of these things. They make me so irrationally angry.
I like how Winnie the Pooh and company, they can't remember how to eat, but they learned how to get dressed.
Yeah. There's a scene later in the movie that I thought was really funny when there's this confrontation and Pooh gets hit with a bottle. And he's the same height as the guy, and he gets hit with the bottle and he gets angry, and he's like, he turns around, he's instantly 2 times bigger than the guy.
Okay, I thought I saw that too, because he's a little bit bigger than the guys that you're talking about. You're talking about the scene near the end, like with the 4 mechanics or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, he goes from being like Tatanka to like Andre the Giant, like that.
Yeah. He's huge.
Do we have anything to say about these characters other than that there's like a slew of them and they all seem pretty fucking useless?
I don't really understand. They're getting together for like, it's like a retreat kind of basically, but they're so different. The characters are so different and they're like almost indiscernible from each other. They almost seem like the same person.
I had no idea who any of them were. Like, all I saw was, okay, I'll call her the social media girl or the cam girl that's obsessed with herself. And then the other 4 to 6. I'm not even exactly sure how many of them there were.
I think there were
I want to
5
say
total.
4. Okay, so several women that they all kind of look alike. They all kind of sound alike. They don't have any, again, aside from the cam girl, they don't have any hint of character to them. And I want to say they're all incredibly stupid, but it's not like this movie's that smart to begin with. Like, they just aren't quick enough to outrun a bear, I guess.
Or just to leave. Like, they have transportation.
Why would you stay there in the first place?
Right. They don't. Okay, so the only of the 5 characters, not to diverge too far from the characters, there's one. The main character, Maria, is the only one. Well, they look like you mentioned.
Is she the final girl?
Yeah, she's the one. Yeah, she's the one that's like been in therapy because some unrelated weirdo came into her room when she was sleeping one night. Again, totally unrelated to anything else in the movie, but it's like a major plot point that never gets talked about again, just to set up this trip, I guess. And her therapist, you should get away with your friends. That's what happens. She's the only one that's any different than any of the other ones. Like, that, she's the only one that you can really tell the difference. But I don't understand that. What was I going to say? I took a note on this.
I didn't even write any notes on this. Like, I was watching this and I had things out to be able to take notes. And as I'm watching, I'm like, there's really nothing to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I really wrote down were a lot of just nitpicky, like, why this? Why that? The one scene I was thinking of is that it's after Christopher Robin's kind of talked to Pooh after the whole incident at the beginning of the movie. And he's like, why are you doing this? This isn't you, and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet go and this is such a stupid thing. Like, as I'm listening to myself say these words, this just sounds like the dumbest fucking thing that I have said this week. And that's saying a lot. Yeah.
It might be.
But he's like, hey, why are you doing this? Don't do this. You're a good guy, whatever. They kill one of the girls. Again, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but then they write in the house, in the outside, what is it? It's like, go away,
it says,
or
get
just
out,
leave.
or something like that. I think it says get out.
Why are you telling me to go away, but you're killing me? Like, you're killing me and all my friends. Why are you telling me to go away? It just didn't make any sense. Like, this is what you want to do. You don't have to do this.
Right.
You killed all these people. You're killing all these people. And it's the reason that it said that you're doing this is because you're hungry. You don't have anything to eat, but you're killing these people. And
how come they never eat any of them?
Only Christopher Robin's wife. That's the only one that we know for sure.
Did they eat her? I noticed that she was like
skeletal.
Yeah, but I didn't know that they ate her.
I think they like boil her. They boil these people down into honey, or like I didn't get like
is
what
that
they
what's
actually
going
did.
On?
And the eating scene, Winnie the Pooh eating and just smearing the shit all over his face. Is that a thing? Is that how bears eat? Like, I thought most things eat by putting things actually in their mouth.
I mean, when I've seen real bears eat, it can be a pretty big mess because like they'll just kind of, I've seen them just kind of like shove their face in whatever they're eating, and it tends to be kind of bloody.
Yeah,
but
messy.
Yeah, it's not like they have table manners, but they're not seeing their, like, I don't think I've ever seen one just like rub it on his face like, something out of Infinity Pool or whatever. So
relevant callback.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of goo in both these movies, but did you have any opinion well, I think I know where you're going to go with this, but what is your opinion on the effects or lack thereof in this attempt at cinema?
They weren't great. Yeah. I mean, they weren't the worst thing I've ever seen. I think that.
No, I would agree with that.
I think Sharkula, you talked about Sharkula a little bit ago. That's kind of like, it's a little bit better than that.
Yeah, but Sharkula had a theme song.
Yeah, true. Well, we're not comparing. I'm just saying the effects in Sharkula were pretty bad. This is a little bit better. Some of the blood stuff, like there's a wood chipper scene, which the quietest wood chipper I've ever heard in my life.
I wasn't even sure it was a wood chipper.
Yeah, because that's not, I mean, it's just a disposal unit, but there's like a little bit of a trickle of blood that comes out. That looks super fake. Some of the other things looked okay. I feel like the IMDb, the main review that was up, said something about the effects weren't really there, but I mean, there were effects, and they were for the most part, they were subpar, but they're not the worst things I've ever seen. They're not the worst effects, like digital effects, and they're almost mostly all digital effects. There are a few practical things it seems like, but again, with such a small budget, it'd be really tough probably to do a lot of practical effects, which is weird because I think they did practical effects because they were cheaper, right? Initially.
I mean, initially, yeah. I think the effects in this, although they're a far cry from great, I would agree with you. They're not the worst thing that I've seen. And I could say that even including some of the stuff that we've watched in the last couple months for this show, they're not by far the worst thing. I think the bigger problem with it is the fucking lighting in this movie is all over the place between, like, take a scene like where Pooh's sitting in this, like, random sports car, which I'm not even 100% sure where the sports car fucking came from. Like, maybe it was the girls. I don't know. Shows you how close I was watching this movie. You know, they do kind of the noir, like, dark and red, like, backlighting and stuff, trying to make Pooh look creepy. And I guess that's fine if that's what you're going for. But then they'll, like, cut to the next scene where the lighting is just so bad that almost everything on the screen is just obscured by shitty lighting. I don't even want to call it darkness because I feel like that would be complimenting it, because we've seen movies like Hellraiser, for example, where there's a ton of darkness and they use that to try to, like, set a mood or whatever. This just feels like they couldn't afford another fucking light bulb.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't think it was that bad, the lighting piece of it.
I mean, there's parts where it's okay, but you're usually the bigger stickler for this type of thing than I am. But it's like every other scene, it's like, all right, you figured out how to light scene 32, but scene 33, you're like, fuck it. You know, just put some computer gore in there and see what happens.
Yeah, cover it up. There's one scene a couple things I really have to pick to argue, not argue, but, like, voice my grievance about, I guess.
Are you going to talk about the scene where she's running with a gun that disappears and reappears?
No, I didn't notice that it disappears and reappears, but it does have, one of them does have to do with a gun.
Okay.
They find some random person, a victim, but they're alive, and she takes the gun. Okay, I could be wrong. I did pay attention. I did watch this. I pay attention to all these movies, right? Because this is like super fucking serious what we're doing here.
I absolutely paid attention, even though I had no idea where the car came from that was used as a murder weapon.
Okay, that's fair. But they have a gun. If I'm correct, I count, and I'm pretty sure my math was passable. Is there one bullet in this fucking gun?
Sure.
She shoots it in the air, and then she aims it, and it never shoots again. Like, there's never another bullet. And the other thing, I was going to say Instagram, the cam girl kind of character that's in the hot tub, she's sitting there taking pictures of herself, like selfies in the hot tub and doing, like, the peace sign and look like duck lips and kissy faces and whatnot. And she's scrolling through her pictures to see which one she's going to post. And she notices in the background of her picture, there's this weird looking figure in the background of the thing. Some dude from
Slipknot showed up. That's all.
Yeah, Corey Taylor showed up, and
second week in a row making a Slipknot reference too. Who would have thought?
But she takes the picture. She sees this creepy thing in her pictures. She kind of gets out of the hot tub. She yells a little bit, like, "Oh, you fat freak! Like, what are you gonna do?" Blah blah blah. And then she just gets back in the hot tub with her back to where the thing was coming and closes her eyes.
Smart.
You're just dead. I mean, you're just asking for it.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is they dragged her death out. I guess it doesn't matter. But, like, I thought she was dead 2 or 3 times before they got to the actual, like, culmination of her death scene, which, if this was a more creative movie or frankly, a more entertaining movie, I might be amused by that because it went that far over the top. But with this one, it just kind of felt me like, let's just get this fucking over with. We know she's not going to live. Let's just do what you got to do, stupid bear, and move on.
Yeah, I was just happy that this was an hour and 24 minutes. To be perfectly honest, there weren't a whole lot of watch checks. Like, I wasn't really looking at it much more than
it does move along pretty well. Like, it doesn't sit there and
linger on most things.
That or have some, like, mid-movie, like, moral dilemma where the bear is like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be murdering people. Oh, I can talk too.
There's no big epiphany or anything, but it's just like, yeah, it does move along. But I mean, I gotta say, you've already said this has been kind of greenlit for a sequel. I mean, honestly, the guy that wrote this movie is probably the one greenlighting it for a sequel. I'm sure it made enough money, but I feel like I need to file a restraining order because it threatens me. This film threatens me that Winnie the Pooh is going to be returned, and I don't think anyone's asking for that, including me.
So the sad thing is, of the other movies of his that I've seen, the other, like this company's movie, whatever they are, this is actually one of the better ones. So, like, you want a bad movie by this same group, like, go watch Curse of Jack Frost or one of those. Like, it could be worse, or it does get worse, and I'm sure you're not surprised by that at all. But, I mean, of course this movie's going to get a sequel. I mean, they made $4 million on a $100,000 budget. They're going to make another one.
And as much as I didn't enjoy this movie and, again, wanted it just to be over, yeah, special effects weren't anything really to write home about, but there weren't anything really glaringly awful about them. I mean, it's a serviceable. We've said this about quite a few movies. It's serviceable, but that doesn't mean I liked it. You know, technically it seems okay for the most part.
Yeah, I'll actually go as far to say, I mean, it's bad. It is a bad movie. Like, we're not obviously not sugarcoating it. We're kind of shitting on it because I really don't feel bad about it. Like, I'm fine with shitting on something every now and then.
I don't think we are shitting on it at all.
Maybe a little. I will say, in the big picture of generic slasher movies, it's a far cry from the worst I've seen. In fact, I don't think it's as bad as... I mean, this movie currently on Rotten Tomatoes right now, the tomato meter for the critics has it at 3% out of 100.
I think it's better than that. The thermometer.
Whatever.
IMDb, the rating on this, 3.1 out of 10.
No, this is just 3%. So
I know. This would be like 31%.
I don't think that's too far off, but I mean, this isn't the worst thing that we'll probably watch this year. Well, I don't think it is the worst thing we've watched this year, but
no. Like, two of them off the top of my head are worse.
Yeah, but there's not a whole lot of redeeming qualities in it to make me say, I need more of this.
Yeah.
I need more of this shit in my life. I don't know. I don't really feel like we have a whole ton to add. Why don't you go ahead and get into your hot dogs here and we can wrap on this bear shit.
All right. Well, so like we've kind of mentioned, the movie, it uses the license for Winnie the Pooh basically to get you to watch the movie. Like, if it wasn't for Winnie the Pooh, you probably would have never heard of this movie.
Unless you're someone like me or you, maybe. So,
or had any inkling. I'm sure the media wouldn't have picked up and ran with this as much as it was if it wasn't Winnie the Pooh. That all being said, it's a very paint by number horror movie. The only original thing that it had going for it was Winnie the Pooh, and they really don't exploit it to its fullest advantage. You can't really blame them for trying to do something different with Winnie the Pooh since they got a chance to do it, but it's just full of characters. You can't tell one from the other. Besides Christopher Robin, and even with all these characters, they act so ridiculously stupid that you're just kind of begging for them to be dead so this movie can be over. On top of that, like I said before, I think the masks are just infinitely punchable. And I think with all that summed up, you can bet that this is not a movie I'm going to be watching anytime soon. Again, I got to give it 4 mouth-smearing jars of honey out of 11 hot dogs.
Yeah, I'm not that far off from you. I mean, this movie is unoriginal, uninspired. Like you said, it's paint by numbers. It's every character in this movie is there to be a body count added to Pooh. And God, that sounds terrible. Yeah, everyone in there is really just there to be Pooh fodder one way or another. And you don't get anything overly original in this movie as far as what you're seeing from the kills and the gore and all that stuff. Like, the most original thing I'd say is arguably Piglet in the pool with the sledgehammer. Kind of make it sound like Clue. That's maybe the most, like, it's not even really original, but it's probably the best, like, looking of the kills out of all of them from what I remember. Spoiler for something I just said, I guess. Not that it really fucking matters. Like, you kind of know once these characters show up, like, well, someone's going to die, you know. At the same time, it's a far cry from the worst thing that I've seen. It's what it is, man. I'd give it 3.5 Winnie the Pooh honey snot rockets out of 10 hot dogs.
And I think it's official that we've scored this movie better than Paranormal Highway and Super Mario Brothers.
And Black Devil Doll from Hell.
I think Black Devil Doll from Hell is a better movie than this. And maybe my rating wouldn't reflect that, but I think it's more original, at least. But, yeah.
I mean, I guess I can agree with that. So, look, I thought this was on streaming already. So this is not available to stream for free. It is currently available to rent on Amazon. I have to think if you give it another week or two, this will end up on Tubi like this, all the other ones that this director does. Like, this is that kind of movie. Tubi, Pluto, all those free places that have shitty movies for free. Right now, this is $9.99 to rent. I would strongly advise against that.
Wait.
Do not rent this. Yeah, wait a couple weeks.
Please, wait.
Yeah, but once it's free, I mean, get ripped and watch this. It won't be the worst thing that you've done, but tell us how, like, stupid it was. I would love to hear your feedback on this. I don't know this stupid ass movie. Additionally, if we're going to watch any more bear movies this year, they better be a hell of a lot better than the last two that we've watched, because we've had now 2 bear movies in a relatively short span, and I wouldn't say either one of them is quite at the level of, like, I don't know, Grizzly or something like that.
Gentle Ben,
yeah.
So that brings us to this week's question of the week. If you could turn any property into a movie, what would the property be and what would the movie be about? We're talking maybe a property that hasn't been turned into a movie yet, or maybe a movie in one genre that you'd want to flip into a different genre. That's what we're talking about for this week's question of the week.
All right, so that is something we'll try to come up with answers to bring you next week and kind of link these together. Between now and then, we would like to get your feedback on how you would answer the question of the week. So you can send us that feedback at the usual spots on social media at Dewey Podmonster, pretty much anywhere that you can social media. You can do it on our website, which is crap.town. You can do it if you're listening on Spotify. You can reply right on the episode somehow. There's a way to do that. It's been done, so continue. Or you could always send us an email, whatever you want to do. In the meantime, past that, we also would appreciate if you are still subscribing, liking, sharing, doing all that kind of good stuff with this episode or the show. And while you're at it, go subscribe to Dissect That Film too, and let them know how much you love that they suggested that we watch this.
I know I love that they suggested that we watch this movie. Thank you.
We will be back next. Actually, we'll get back to that in a second. 3 seconds back. Sean, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on the YouTubes at youtube.drafttherapy.com. If you have even a passing interest in craft beer, that's what I talk about there, because I am the authority on Michigan craft beer. You can also find me on all the social media networks at Draft Therapy.
Okay, so we will be back next week with another listener suggestion. Probably going to be just as torturous as this one, but we're going to do it anyway. And then, yeah, we got a few of those. We're going to try to knock out a whole 3 or 4 of these in a row, I think, because they're piling up, right?
And we care about you, the listener.
Absolutely. We care about you like Winnie the Pooh cares about honey and cannibalism. Is that cannibalism? I guess it's not cannibalism.
He's half human.
Is that so half cannibalism?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Halfableism?
Halfableism.
Let's
run with it. Let's make it a thing.
All right. That's it. So we will be back next week. You guys have yourself a good week. Drink some beer, watch some shitty movies, and send us
just Pooh-bear, Winnie the Pooh-bear, looking for fun, chasing some honeybees. Pooh-bear, I know he's out there, rumbling, tumbling, climbing.
And that leads us into tonight's. Well, let's do that again. And that leads us to the one more time. And that leads us to this week's question of the week. Now let me think. Give me a minute.
This is good podcasting right here.
Yeah. What a bad idea this was.
You don't have to do the whole thing again if you don't want to.
I want to. All right, you ready? Yep. Okay. How did I start last time? All right, I got it. What did I say?
So that brings us to the question of the week.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. All right, I got it. So that brings us... Oh, Jesus, that was loud. So that brings us to this week's... Sorry. All right. This is it.
Wow, that peaked really hard there.
See, told you.